People have to have the conversation with people. Those are hard conversations.
It's great to talk about it because you need to start somewhere. This rabbit hole goes deep.
Thanks so much for joining us and watching Bias Unexcused. I am Silver Vixen. I have an amazing guest, and I'm so super excited that he came to spend time and talk with me today. Ron CEO Abrams. His name says it all. Hey, Ron, how are you?
I am well, and yourself?
I'm doing wonderful.
Yes.
But I was immediately taken with this gentleman. He's smart, down to earth, and when he speaks, it just something about the way you talk to me made me know that you were kind of a real guy, not putting on just because you were meeting, someone for the first time. So I enjoyed it. And since then, he's let me in on his podcast. He's a veteran, does lots of wonderful things through the VA and for veterans. So I'll let him tell a little bit more about his story. Ron, let the people know who you are and what it is you do.
Again, my name is Ron Abrams. I am a U.S. Army retired, did 21 years, 3 months, 18 days. Yeah, I retired in 2005.
Okay.
At the time, I was married. As a matter of fact, I got married at 21. Marriage lasted all the way up until the 17th and a half year.
Wow.
I was actually I got orders next to the last year to go to Korea. And then when I got back from Korea, everything reveals itself. So that's when that marriage ended. Decided to move back to Texas because number one, there's no state taxes here.
Right.
And plenty of military bases. So
benefit of being a veteran.
Exactly. And now I work for the state and the state of Texas, and we essentially help veterans become employment ready, helping them with their resumes, interview techniques, business plans, and anything you can think of to include service-connected disability.
Right.
But as of late, I am the district outreach coordinator. So I work with organizations that provide services for veterans, and I help build partnerships and collaborations. And that's me in a nutshell.
That's a big nutshell. That's a lot. Impressive. Very, but we see that Texas, you couldn't stay away from us. So we're glad you went and came back and went and came back again.
Yes.
So this podcast, one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you, especially about this topic, is because I created this podcast to kind of just expose bias. That's an undertone, that we don't really, it's not a racial bias. It's not because of what you look like, but it could simply just be because of what I think you are when I see you. And as a man, I know a lot of times being a woman, we look at a man in a particular light. Oh, he's not sensitive. Oh, he's not this or he's not that. And we wrap you up in a tight little bow of what we think you actually are. So I wanted to talk to men who I feel have done some work on yourself to become a man in your maleness. And I wanted you to speak to that. So I had a few questions that I'm asking just because I want to get some insight and maybe leave people watching the podcast with a better idea or understanding of who the man is before they judge. Okay. So I want you to just answer honestly, and we'll discuss whatever happens in between. Yeah, get yourself together. Get ready. Use your masculinity to mask or cover up when you're frustrated or hurt or any of those things, or if you're disappointed, or do you actually live in those feelings?
I think the best way to answer that is the military taught me a lot how to move within crowds, especially in the civilian world. But when it comes to relationships, well, I'll deal with the crowd first. You definitely want to present yourself as someone who's approachable, but you also want to be respected as well. So you try to keep in mind what their feelings are when you do converse with them, or when you're in their presence. Right. When it comes to crowds, relationships, you do want to tamp it down a little bit, in my opinion. because you don't want to intimidate and just overrun a person. You want to communicate well. You definitely
Right.
want to communicate well.
So if you were ever in a situation where your feelings are hurt and you're disappointed, do you portray that? And whether it's relationship or in the crowd, if you're feeling a particular kind of way, you got passed over for an advance, you got disrespected, whatever it is, do you shield that emotion with your masculinity, or do you say, verbalize, or show like, you know what, that hurt, that felt some kind of way?
Well, I'll definitely experience the hurt, but I definitely don't want to let that feeling show. Someone said, "Never let them see you sweat."
Right.
Uh, there was one time wherein, as if I can give an example, is that all
Sure.
right?
Sure.
There was a time wherein you remember when I did the radio show,
Yeah.
and it, one of the supervisors, the area supervisor, said, our numbers are down. You guys need to, step it up, things of that nature. And he looked at me. He said, "And Ron, that radio station is not doing anything." But I just remained calm, and I
Right.
just continued to look at him. I gave him a nod, to let him know I understood what he was saying. And then I just went back to writing notes. So I later asked him to do a essentially a paragraph as to my character on LinkedIn.
Oh.
And one of the lines he put on there was, "He is unflappable."
Oh.
And I
Okay.
thought that was so interesting, but I was never able to get back with him to find out if whether that incident was what he was referring to.
Yeah, or something
But that
else.
was the first thing that came to my
Okay,
mind.
so I'm going to go back into the question of maleness, right? Masculinity. When you are dealing with a woman in a relationship situation or in a business situation or in a familial niece, daughter, anybody, when you're dealing with a woman, do you believe that as a man, you have a responsibility to help heal her from
Mm,
any previous trauma or issues that she may be suffering?
wow, that is a very good question. Is it my responsibility to heal that particular person? Um, I think it's my responsibility to help them cope. You can't solve everyone's problems, that's for sure.
Right. Right.
However, if you're genuine in your response and genuine in helping them, you'll be able to help them a whole lot better, as opposed to being judgmental, bringing the subject back up during a later argument or whatever.
Yeah,
You,
man. Don't do that.
no, not at all. But I will be honest with you, men, when we love a woman, it is our heart's desire to see you happy every second of the day.
Wow.
We don't want to lose you for nothing. And we
Right.
certainly don't want to argue with you all the
Right.
time. Now, I don't think it's our responsibility to heal every woman we come in contact with, but we should help her cope with what she's dealing with.
Okay.
I'm a big proponent for therapy. And in fact, I was actually thinking about doing that myself at the VA, Veterans Administration. There's no bad stigma about it, but they help you process what you're going through and to come up with a solution to those problems a whole lot quicker. So again, I think it's our responsibility to help you cope with the things that you're dealing with.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. And I know, being a veteran myself, like you just touched a little bit on, that the VA is able to help, and counseling is a good idea for everyone, not just male or female, veteran or non-veteran, but having somebody that you could talk to even just bounce things off of. When you hear it back out of your own mouth, sometimes it gives you clarity on
Right.
what the next step forward really is.
Yeah.
So also in that same vein, being a veteran, I'm a veteran as well, and we have different experiences because we're male and female. But the military does, in my opinion, what it did for me was to encourage me to mask my vulnerability. Do you feel like that's something that you dealt with or you deal with as a man? Like, do you feel like vulnerability is maybe a weakness?
I think it's the way you, as a man, express your vulnerability.
Okay.
If you're too mushy and you're bringing the tears and all that, no, you still want to approach it, in a masculine way. And this is just my opinion.
Yeah,
I can't.
what's mushy got to do with tears though, Ron? I mean, come on now.
A woman wants a strong man who can be a problem solver. And if he's just as emotional as you are, you're really not expecting him to find that problem too quickly.
You're listening to Bias Unexcused. Okay, so listen, now you hit me with the mushy and tears.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we saying that tears equal mushy, Ron? Is that
It's a sign of vulnerability that I think can be used as a tool against you later on, especially if your communication is not on up to par and you're arguing at a later stage. I've seen it to where a woman would bring that back up as a knife to stab them.
if that were not true, Ron, if you didn't feel like it could be used as a weapon, do you think you would function differently in vulnerability?
Now that you put it that way, I can see how it could help in a relationship, but again, it goes back to the communication piece.
Right.
It goes back to that. I can understand if there was a parent, if one of my parents died, and I'm showing that side of vulnerability. But if there's something that my significant other has done and it's affected me emotionally, I just feel I need to keep that masculinity intact.
Right.
And try to express exactly what it was that had me upset. But if I'm showing too much emotion and I'm talking about feelings all the time, I feel it's a detriment to me because I can't come up with those solutions because I am a man.
Well,
And what do we want to do as men? We want to fix the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna say this on behalf of all women. I'm going to apologize now for the fact that men don't feel comfortable showing us vulnerability and sharing that, because it's unfortunate, because we all experienced the murders, that took place in front of TV and all the cameras of the Black men in our lives and in our neighborhoods, right? And that's a shocking, terrible, traumatic incident, okay? And I have asked the men in my life, multiple men, are you okay? How are you feeling post this trauma, right? Because we're learning now with this post-COVID and during this COVID that it's okay to feel not okay. And every Black man that I questioned, hey, how are you feeling? The answer was always, I'm okay. That's messed up. I'm good. I don't see how that's a real answer when you've just watched someone who looks like you be murdered.
Right.
And all the feelings that must bring up from the history. Like, as a man, I want you to be able to, and especially my man, I want you to be able to say, babe, I'm feeling some kind of way. This is hurtful to me. I am fearful. I am afraid for my sons and for myself and for you. But nobody answered in the affirmative when I said, is this bothering you? Are you having a problem? Not one man said, yes, I'm not good. You all, about 4 that are really close to me, the answer was the same. It's messed up and I see it and I'm angry about it, but it hasn't affected me. And on an emotional level, I just don't see how that's possible. So I'm gonna apologize now for being part of a group of people who have not allowed you to feel safe in a vulnerable place with us, because that's something we have to work on.
I appreciate that. You don't hear that too often, an apology, but thank you so much.
You're welcome. Listen, that's
Yeah.
self-work, Ron. I've been seeing a counselor too.
Okay. It goes back to what you were saying earlier. When we first meet someone, we're sizing them up, but it's all based on our perception.
Right.
And we get our perceptions from our past history.
Yeah.
Or our previous experiences. So that's the only thing we can bring to the front to properly assess, or in our own minds, assess who we're meeting in front of us.
Right.
So again, that's where the communication comes in.
And that's exactly the point where bias happen on. We form an opinion about each other. And that's my whole goal in having these conversations, is to really expose these bias and figure out how to see each other differently. So is there something that you would like for women to know? Because we just had the conversation and it brought out that mushy and tears kind of equal vulnerability to you. And then that also felt like that vulnerability is a weapon that could be used against you. So in that vein, is there something that you would like women to know about men, something that you think we don't know or that we don't pay attention to?
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I think this might be good.
Okay, give it to me.
What you don't know is, and you use an example of asking a man, how are you? And he says, I'm okay, right?
Yeah.
But what if he goes into what's wrong? Are you prepared to hear it? How are you going to perceive it? How are you going to assess it? And how are you going to help him cope? Here's the secret. If we're expressing something to you as a woman, the one we love, right? Just be quiet when we're explaining. Now, listen, don't take it negatively.
Yeah.
You think, well, there's a lot of women that think that being quiet is being submissive and all this other stuff, and you're under his subjection, But you're speaking 1,000 words when you're quiet and we're talking. That does wonders for a relationship and to a man. Now, let me explain.
Yeah.
When you're engaged and you're not interrupting, you're not interjecting, he's on a thought process to solve a problem, so he has to stay linear. It's not going to take long either. He's probably going to take maybe 3 to 5 sentences to get out what he needs to say. But if you're constantly interjecting and interrupting him, it messes up his flow. But when you're quiet, that's what communication is, 90%? I'm sorry, 90% silent. Yeah. Only 10% is verbal, but you're communicating thousands of words. So Tony Robbins said, he said, your quality of life is based upon the quality of your communication. Your quality of life is determined by the quality of your communication.
Wow.
And if 90% of communication is nonverbal, you're winning in that relationship.
Right.
So that's what I would want women to know. Yeah.
That's deep. That's deep, Ron. That's when I tell you that's so on point, I'm gonna text you after this. I'm gonna text you something that I got this morning that said just that very thing. So when I tell you that response was perfect. That response was, the universe keeps sending me lessons, right? I got one in the form of an Instagram post this morning, a woman with the same name as me, actually, said that very thing.
Wow. So we've got confirmation then.
Listen, man, in the worst way, I got some phone calls to make. I got some more apologizing to do.
Wow. Your femininity, I'm telling you, it brings out the masculinity in a man.
Yeah.
When you present your femininity to us, when you're quiet, you're communicating, and especially if you touch us, it calms us. You know, you can rub the back of our head, rub our shoulder, just a little, you know. And I'm telling you, it does wonders. Y'all just don't know.
Yeah. Listen, we do now, because I'm putting it out there. Be quiet and rub the back of his head, and all is well.
Yep. You'll get more answers out of him than you would if you were arguing and you're pushing the buttons and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man, I appreciate that. I'm really glad I held that to the last, because that was a really good way to close it, Ron. That was golden.
Is there a secret you need to share with the brothers that we should know?
You know what? Maybe we wait until the next podcast.
All right.
So with that, I'm going to say thank you so much for joining me today, Ron. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with you, as I always do. We don't catch up nearly enough. Yeah. So let's let 2022 find us having more conversations like this. So thank you so much for being a part of Bias Unexcused.
Thank you. And I look forward to talking again.
Absolutely. And so until next time, guys, just remember, voice is everything. So use yours to build someone up.
People have to have the conversation with people. Those are hard conversations.
It's great to talk about it because you need to start somewhere. This rabbit hole goes deep.